Welcome to Galactic Nova Stories, where cosmic emotions come to life. Your journey begins now. Empress Vex stood motionless as the planetary governor trembled before her. His failure to suppress the mining riots had cost the Coalition 14 cargo vessels and 1/3 of the Moon's quarterly production. Insignificant in the grand scheme of her 12-system domain, but precedent mattered. "Your Eminence," he stammered, skin flushing deep purple with terror, "with additional troops I could—" Silence. Her voice never rose above a conversational tone. It never needed to. The throne room, vast enough to hold hundreds, contained only 6 beings: the Empress, the doomed governor, and 4 of her personal guards. The emptiness amplified her words. "You have demonstrated incompetence. The Coalition cannot afford weakness." She lifted a single finger. The guards moved forward in practiced unison. "Please," the governor whispered as they seized him. "My family will be provided for, as is proper," Vex answered. "Your offspring will have the opportunity to restore honor to your lineage through service." She turned away before the guards reached the execution chamber. His pleas echoed until the massive doors sealed shut. Admiral Krell waited in the adjacent strategy room, his exoskeleton clicking softly as he bowed. "The border report, Admiral. An unknown vessel crossed into protected space near the Meridian Nebula," Krell reported. "Small craft, non-coalition design. We disabled and boarded it as protocol dictates." Vex's 4-fingered hand brushed across the holographic display, enlarging the image of the captured ship, sleek but primitive by coalition standards. "Origin: unknown, Empress. The beings claim to come from a system called Sol. They identify themselves as humans. Intelligence has no record of such a species." This piqued her interest. The Coalition had catalogued over 300 sentient species in their expansion. An unknown one was rare. Threat assessment? Minimal, Empress. Their technology is centuries behind ours. However, Krell hesitated. Vex's silver eyes narrowed. "Continue." "They behave unusually. They do not cower appropriately, yet they show no aggression. They simply ask questions about everything. They seem most concerned with the welfare of their companions rather than their own safety." "Curious." Vex examined the images of the captives, bipedal, soft-skinned, with peculiar fur on their heads. "Bring them to me, all of them." Hours later, 6 humans stood before her throne. They wore matching blue uniforms, now wrinkled from confinement. The tallest one stood slightly ahead of the others. "I am Captain Eli Reed of the Earth exploration vessel Dauntless," he announced, voice steady, despite the armed guards surrounding them. "We apologize for violating your territory. Our charts showed this region as unclaimed space." Vex leaned forward, studying these strange creatures who neither trembled in terror nor bristled with defiance. Instead, they watched her with something she rarely encountered: simple curiosity. "You are very far from home," she observed. "Yes, Your Excellency," Reed replied. "We're on a deep space scientific mission. First contact situations are actually what we train for." How peculiar, Vex thought. They faced the ruler of the most feared empire in this quadrant, yet they maintained this calm demeanor. Were they too primitive to understand their situation, or was there something more? "Captain Reed," she said finally, "your incursion would typically result in immediate execution. However, I find myself curious about your species." For the first time, Vex saw fear flicker across the human's face, not for himself, but as he glanced at his crew. Fascinating. "What do you propose?" he asked carefully. "You will remain as my guests," Vex decided. "I wish to learn more about these humans. You, Captain, will serve as my personal attendant. The rest will be appropriately housed and studied." Reed opened his mouth to protest, then seemed to reconsider. "And then?" Vex smiled, revealing sharp teeth. "That depends entirely on how interesting you prove to be." The human sleeping quarters were Spartan but clean, a considerable upgrade from the detention cells where they'd spent their first 2 nights in Coalition custody. Eli sat with his 5 crew members, speaking in hushed tones despite the obvious surveillance devices mounted in each corner. "They're splitting us up tomorrow," he told them. Dr. Lin, they're particularly interested in your medical knowledge. Torres and Abrams, they want you in their engineering division. Torres, the ship's mechanic, frowned. Are we prisoners or guests? The guards won't give straight answers. Both, I think, Eli replied. The Empress seems genuinely curious about us, which is keeping us alive. But make no mistake, we're valuable only as novelties. Dr. Lin, the oldest crew member, shook her head. I've analyzed the biological data they've permitted me to access. There are hundreds of sentient species in this coalition, but they're all governed through fear. This Empress, her species isn't even the majority. She holds power purely through calculated violence, which is why we need to be extremely careful, Eli emphasized. Remember your training. Be respectful, valuable, and observant. Don't challenge their customs directly, but don't abandon our principles either. A chime sounded, signaling the end of their permitted gathering time. As the others filed out, Navigator Chen caught Eli's arm. Captain, she whispered, what exactly will being the Empress's personal attendant entail? Eli gave a tight smile. I guess I'll find out. Morning came quickly. 2 tall insectoid guards escorted Eli through a labyrinth of corridors. The Imperial Palace was a marvel of engineering. Organic curves blended with crystalline structures, ceilings soaring hundreds of feet above. Other species scurried out of their path, eyes downcast. The Empress's private chambers occupied an entire wing. Eli was brought to an antechamber where a stern official with translucent skin waited. Human, the official said. I am Chief Attendant. Moro, you will be instructed in proper protocol before meeting Her Eminence. Mistakes will result in punishment. For 4 hours, Eli was drilled on precise forms of address, appropriate postures, and the countless tasks he might be commanded to perform. The complexity seemed deliberately designed to ensure failure. Why am I here? Eli finally asked. Surely, you have servants better trained for this. Moro's membranous skin flushed. The Empress has chosen you. It is not your place to question. But it is yours? Eli raised an eyebrow. Moro stepped closer. Watch yourself, human. Others have tried to gain influence through novelty. They are not alive to regret it. Before Eli could respond, a chime sounded. Moro immediately straightened. The Empress returns from council. Remember your training. The doors slid open. Empress Vex entered, surrounded by advisors still mid-discussion. She wore an elaborate metallic garment that shifted colors with each movement. Up close, Eli could see her skin had a subtle scale pattern, and her silver eyes had vertical pupils. The advisors fell silent when they noticed Eli. Your Eminence, one hissed. The human should not be present during sensitive discussions. Vex waved a dismissive hand. Leave us. The advisors departed, casting suspicious glances at Eli. When the doors closed, Vex removed her ceremonial collar, instantly appearing less imposing. Captain Reed, she addressed him directly, your species has no telepathic abilities, correct? No. Your Eminence. Good. Then you serve a dual purpose. You are both an object of study and a confidant who cannot extract thoughts from my mind. She gestured to a crystalline decanter. Pour the blue liquid. 2 measures. As Eli complied, he asked, are telepathic species common in the coalition? Common enough to be problematic. She accepted the drink. Tell me of Earth. Your civilization. Your history. Eli considered carefully. Earth has many nations, though we're increasingly unified. Our history includes both terrible wars and remarkable cooperation. And you explore space for a knowledge, not conquest. Primarily knowledge, yes. Vex studied him with those unsettling silver eyes. Fascinating. Either you are the most accomplished liars in the galaxy, or you represent something truly unique. She set down her glass. We shall discover which, Captain Reed. Beginning tomorrow, you will attend me during all non-classified functions. And my crew. Remain valuable, she said simply, and they remain safe. 14 days into his service, Eli had developed a reasonable understanding of coalition power structures. The Empress held absolute authority over 12 major systems comprising 83 inhabited worlds. Her rule was maintained through a careful balance of military might, economic control, and the cultivation of almost mythical fear. Today, He stood 3 paces behind her throne as planetary representatives delivered their quarterly tributes and reports. Each approached with ritualized terror, many visibly trembling. "The Vestian delegation, Your Eminence," announced the court herald. 3 robed figures prostrated themselves. The leader spoke without raising his head. "Great Empress, we bring the requested quantium ore. Production exceeded quotas by 7%. "Rise," Vex commanded. When they did, Eli noticed they kept their inner eyelids closed, a sign of deference he'd learned was common among many species. "Your diligence is noted," the Empress said. "Your system's protection priority will be increased accordingly." The Vestians backed away, still bowing. Eli observed the subtle pattern at work. Performance was rewarded with security, failure punished swiftly and publicly. The system was ruthlessly efficient. During a brief recess, Eli was summoned to bring the Empress a data tablet. As he approached, he overheard her conversation with Admiral Krell. "The Pyraxian resistance grows bolder," Krell reported. "They attacked 3 supply depots this cycle." "Then make an example of their capital city," Vex replied coldly. "The usual protocol." Eli had learned what usual protocol meant. Orbital bombardment precisely calibrated to destroy exactly half a population center, enough to crush resistance while preserving economic assets. He handed her the tablet, keeping his expression neutral despite his horror. Their eyes met briefly. For a fraction of a second, something flickered across her face, something almost like doubt. Later that evening, as Eli assisted in her private chambers, the Empress seemed unusually contemplative. "Your Eminence," he said, breaking protocol by speaking unprompted, "may I ask a question?" She glanced up, more curious than offended. "You may." "The Pyraxian situation, is there no alternative to bombardment?" The room temperature seemed to drop. The 2 guards at the door shifted their weapons. "You were not given clearance for that information," she said softly. "I apologize," Eli replied, maintaining eye contact rather than assuming the customary submissive posture. In human diplomacy, sometimes addressing underlying grievances can silence. Her voice was quiet but sharp as a blade. The guard stepped forward. To everyone's surprise, the Empress raised a hand, stopping them. "Your concern for strangers is peculiar. The Pyraxians are violent extremists. Many rebellions begin that way, but escalate when grievances go unaddressed," Eli said carefully. "On Earth, we've learned that listening can sometimes prevent bloodshed." Vex stared at him for a long moment. "Fascinating. You truly believe this?" "I do, Your Eminence." "Leave us," she commanded the guards, who hesitated before obeying. When they were alone, she leaned forward. "Your candor would result in execution if you were any other being in my realm. Why risk it?" Eli considered his answer carefully. "Because I believe you're intelligent enough to recognize when someone is speaking truth rather than flattery." Strange sound emerged from the Empress. A short, sharp exhalation that Eli realized with shock was laughter. "How refreshing," she said. "Everywhere I go, beings cower or scheme. You simply speak." "It's a human trait," Eli replied. "Sometimes helpful, sometimes problematic." "Indeed." She turned to the viewport, where stars glittered beyond the palace shields. "The Pyraxian bombardment will proceed as planned, but I will review their original petitions beforehand." It wasn't much, but Eli recognized it as significant coming from her. Perhaps the smallest seed of change had been planted. That night, as he was escorted back to his quarters, Chief Attendant Morrow fell into step beside him. "The Empress has cancelled her appearance at tomorrow's execution ceremony," Morrow said quietly. "The first such cancellation in 8 cycles. Whatever game you're playing, human, it will end badly for you." Eli didn't respond, but he wondered if Morrow might be right. The Meridian Grand Hall buzzed with activity as dignitaries from across the coalition gathered for the system alignment ceremony. 200 standard cycles ago, the first planets had joined under a single banner. While technically a celebration, Eli had learned it primarily served as a display of the Empress's power. From his position near the throne, Eli observed the elaborate procession of representatives. The opulence was stunning. Exotic materials, impossible architecture, technology that bordered on magical. Yet beneath the spectacle, he sensed tension. Guards were positioned more densely than usual, and Vex's personal security detail had tripled. "Something's wrong," he whispered to Moro, who stood nearby. The chief attendant didn't look at him. "Attend to your duties, human." The Empress entered to ceremonial music. She wore a magnificent battle dress, symbolic armor crafted from rare metals and embedded with status crystals. The crowd prostrated themselves in waves as she passed. Halfway to the throne it happened. A flash of movement from above. A hooded figure dropping from a maintenance shaft. Guards shouted, but too late. The assassin landed just behind the Empress, energy blade humming to life. Vex spun with preternatural speed, but the confined space of the processional path hindered her guards from intervening. The blade sliced across her side before security forces tackled the attacker. The hall erupted into chaos. Eli pushed forward against the tide of fleeing dignitaries. He reached the Empress as she collapsed, silver blood seeping through her ceremonial. "Garments, medic!" he shouted, kneeling beside her. Guards surrounded them, weapons aimed outward. "Stand away from the Empress," one ordered. "I'm a medic," Eli lied. "Human medical training." He wasn't a doctor, but all Earth exploration captains received extensive emergency treatment training. Vex's eyes fluttered. "Captain," she whispered, recognizing him. Eli examined the wound quickly. The energy blade had cauterized most of it, but a section was bleeding heavily. "I need a clean cloth and your equivalent of a coagulant," he told the nearest guard. Admiral Krell pushed through the security perimeter. "What is this human doing?" he demanded. "Saving her life," Eli replied without looking up. "The wound isn't fatal if treated immediately." Something in his tone must have conveyed competence, because Krell barked orders for medical supplies. Within moments, Eli had what he needed. "This will hurt," he warned the Empress, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Working quickly, Eli applied pressure to the wound, then a coalition healing compound that a guard identified as appropriate for her species. The Empress remained conscious throughout, her silver eyes fixed on him. Medical staff arrived minutes later, taking over with advanced equipment. One gave Eli a surprised look. "You stabilized her correctly. Few would know how to treat Arcasian physiology." "Human medical training emphasizes adaptable principles," Eli explained, though in truth he'd been making educated guesses based on basic triage techniques. The assassination attempt was contained, the perpetrator captured alive. Hours later, Eli was summoned to the Empress's medical chamber. Guards escorted him through security so tight that even Moro was denied entry. Vex reclined on a recovery platform, medical devices monitoring her condition. Despite her injury, she emanated the same commanding presence. "You stayed," she said, without preamble. "When everyone fled, you moved toward danger." Eli nodded. "It seemed the right thing to do." "Why?" Her question held genuine confusion. "You are my captive. My death might have meant your freedom." "That's not how humans operate," Eli replied, "at least not the ones I choose to associate with." "Explain." Eli searched for words she might understand. "Humans evolved as social creatures. We survived through cooperation. When someone is injured, our instinct is to help, even sometimes when that person is an enemy." "Compassion," Vex said the word, as though testing an unfamiliar concept. "Your Dr. Lin mentioned this trait during her interviews. I believed it was exaggerated." "It's real," Eli assured her, "and while it can be a vulnerability, it's also our greatest strength." The Empress was quiet for a long moment. "The assassin was sent by my second counselor," she finally said. "He believed I had grown weak, that I hesitated on the Pyraxian matter because of your influence." Eli felt a chill. "And had you?" "Perhaps." Her silver eyes studied him. "The question, Captain Reed, is whether that makes me weaker or stronger." The Empress's recovery took 6 days by coalition reckoning. During this time, Eli found himself in an unusual position, neither prisoner nor free, but something in between. He was still monitored constantly, but allowed greater access to information, systems, and limited communication with his crew. On the 7th night, when the palace had grown quiet, Eli was surprised by a soft chime at his quarters. The door slid open to reveal Empress Vex herself without her usual entourage. She wore simple attire, a practical bodysuit rather than ceremonial regalia, and carried a small device. "Your Eminence," Eli began, startled. "This visit is not happening," she interrupted, stepping inside and activating the device. A soft field of energy surrounded them. "This creates a surveillance-free zone. We may speak freely for exactly 12 minutes. Eli gestured to the room's only chair, which she ignored. "I have questions," she stated, "about Earth, about humans." "I'll answer what I can. Your historical records, do they show endless conquest, domination of the weak by the strong?" Eli considered carefully. "Parts of our history certainly do. We've had terrible wars, genocide, oppression, but we've also had remarkable cooperation, sacrifice for others, and gradual moral progress. And which path proved more successful? Cooperation, ultimately. Our greatest advancements came through working together, our worst periods through dominance hierarchies." The Empress began pacing the small room. "The coalition was forged through conquest," she said. "Before I took power, 7 different species were fighting for dominance. Billions died in territorial disputes. I unified them through force, yes, but brought stability." "At what cost?" Eli asked quietly. She stopped pacing. "Less than the alternative." "How can you be certain?" Her silver eyes flashed. "Because I lived it. My homeworld was devastated in the species wars. My family executed for belonging to the wrong political faction. I survived by understanding a fundamental truth. Fear is reliable. Fear works. Until it doesn't," Eli countered. "Fear creates stability, but also resentment that builds until it explodes. The assassination attempt proves that." Vex was silent for a moment. "Tell me about Earth governance." Eli explained Earth's various systems: democracy, representation, checks on power. The Empress listened intently, occasionally asking incisive questions that revealed a mind constantly analyzing for strategic advantages. "Your system sounds inefficient," she finally said. "It is," Eli admitted, "but it's resilient. When leaders make mistakes, as all beings do, the system can correct course without collapse." The energy field surrounding them pulsed, indicating their time was nearly up. "One final question," Vex said. "If you were in my position, ruling species so different from your own, many with natural hostilities toward each other, what would you do differently?" Eli met her gaze. "I would find those who value stability but oppose cruelty. Build a coalition based on mutual interest rather than fear. It's harder, slower, but ultimately more stable." "Perhaps impossible," she countered. "Perhaps," he agreed, "but worth attempting." The field dissolved. Vex moved toward the door, then paused. "Tomorrow, there will be a council meeting regarding growing unrest in the outer systems. You will attend." "As my personal advisor." Eli blinked in surprise. "That will be uncontroversial." The corner of her mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. "Indeed it will." As she departed, Eli wondered if he had just witnessed the first crack in an empire built on fear, or merely a tactical move in a game he didn't fully understand. Either way, something was changing in the coalition, and somehow humanity was at the center of it. The council chamber hummed with tension. 12 advisors representing the major species of the coalition sat around a circular table, with the Empress's elevated position completing the arrangement. Eli stood behind her chair, acutely aware of the hostile glances directed his way. "The situation in the Outer Rim has deteriorated beyond acceptable parameters," Admiral Krell reported. 3 systems have declared independence from coalition authority. Their defensive capabilities are minimal, but their propaganda spreads rapidly. Councillor Traz, a tall being with membranous skin, leaned forward. "The standard response is clear. An example must be made." Murmurs of agreement circled the table. Vex remained silent, her expression unreadable. "Specifically," Traz continued, "we recommend a 3-stage suppression. First, orbital bombardment of their governmental centers. Second, public execution of leaders. Third, increased tribute requirements to emphasize the cost of rebellion." Eli managed to keep his expression neutral, though his stomach turned at the casual discussion of mass slaughter. "The human seems disturbed," observed another counselor, this one with multiple eye stalks. "Perhaps sensitive alien ears should not be present for necessary unpleasantness." All eyes turned to Eli. Taking a calculated risk, he addressed the council directly. "I'm not disturbed by necessary actions. I question whether this action is necessary or effective." The chamber erupted in outrage. Voices overlapped in various languages as councillors protested his speech. "Silence," Vex commanded, and the room instantly quieted. "I have granted the human permission to speak. Continue, Captain Reed." Eli stepped forward. "In human history, rebellions rarely arise spontaneously. They grow from grievances left unaddressed. Has anyone investigated why these systems chose such a desperate action, knowing the Coalition's typical response?" Admiral Krell clicked his mandibles in irritation. "Their motivations are irrelevant. Only their compliance matters." "With respect, Admiral, motivation determines whether compliance will last," Eli countered. "Temporary compliance achieved through fear lasts only until the fear fades or becomes familiar." Councillor Traz rose to his feet. "Your Eminence, this is absurd. We cannot allow primitive alien philosophies to influence Coalition security policy. Yet we face our third major rebellion in 8 cycles," Empress Vex noted. "Perhaps our current approaches warrant examination." The room fell deathly silent. Never had the Empress questioned established protocol. "Captain Reed," she continued, "what alternative would you propose?" Eli stepped closer to the tactical display. "A targeted approach. Identify and neutralize. Violent leadership specifically. Simultaneously address legitimate grievances among the general population. Demonstrate that loyalty to the Coalition brings benefits that rebellion cannot." "Weakness," spat a councillor. "The Empress suggests weakness." "I suggest effectiveness," Vex corrected coldly. "Admiral Krell, prepare 2 operation plans, the standard protocol and Captain Reed's targeted approach. We will compare projected outcomes." As the meeting adjourned, the tension was palpable. Eli caught snippets of whispered conversations in various languages, most expressing disbelief or outrage. Councillor Traz lingered, watching the Empress with calculating eyes. Later, in her private strategy room, Vex reviewed both plans with Eli and Admiral Krell. "The targeted approach requires more resources initially," Krell admitted reluctantly, "but projects fewer subsequent rebellions. However, the methodology is untested." "Then we shall test it," Vex decided. "Prepare the special operations teams, as Captain Reed has outlined." After Krell departed, Vex turned to Eli. "You understand the risk I take following your counsel? If this fails, my authority will be severely compromised." "I understand," Eli replied. "But sometimes leadership requires—" The doors burst open. Councillor Traz entered, flanked by elite guards whose insignia Eli didn't recognize. "What is the meaning of this intrusion?" Vex demanded. Traz stepped forward. "Empress Vex, by emergency, authority of the Coalition Security Council, you are relieved of command pending investigation for compromise by alien influence." The guards raised weapons. 2 moved toward Eli while others surrounded the Empress. "This is treason," Vex hissed. "This is preservation of the Coalition," Traz replied. "Your recent behavior, sparing the Paraxians, questioning established protocols, elevating an alien advisor, demonstrates a dangerous shift. The Council has voted. You will both be secured until a formal inquiry can determine the extent of the human influence." Eli tensed, calculating odds of resistance, but Vex gave him a subtle hand signal he'd learned meant stand down. "Very well," she said with dangerous calm. "We will comply with procedure." As they were led away to separate detention areas, Eli caught a final glimpse of the Empress. For the first time since he'd met her, he saw something new in her expression. Not fear, not anger, but something perhaps more dangerous, doubt about everything she had built. The detention cell was austere but not uncomfortable, a small concession to Vex's imperial status, despite her current predicament. 3 days had passed since the coup. Through the energy barrier, she could see guards stationed in the corridor, their postures rigid with uncertainty. After all, until recently, They had feared her absolutely. The barrier rippled and deactivated. 2 guards entered, escorting a familiar figure. Captain Reed, Vex acknowledged, surprised. Eli looked relatively unharmed, though tired. The guard secured him to a chair opposite hers, then retreated to the corridor, reactivating the barrier. Interesting, Vex observed. They fear us plotting together, yet arrange exactly that. Traz must want something. Information, most likely, Eli replied. About Earth, humans, or what exactly I've been telling you. And you've told them nothing useful? I've maintained that I simply answered your questions about human history and governance. Eli studied her. You look well, considering. Vex gave a thin smile. Appearances matter, especially in captivity. She lowered her voice. What news from outside? Little reaches me, but guards talk, Eli said quietly. The rebellion is spreading. 3 more systems have declared independence. Traz's heavy-handed response is backfiring. As expected, Vex nodded. Fear works until it doesn't. You were right, Captain. Eli blinked, surprised by her admission. You seem shocked, she noted. I didn't expect you to acknowledge it so directly, Vex leaned back. I have had 3 days with nothing but time to think. About my empire, about my methods. Her silver eyes met his. About alternatives. And I find myself questioning foundations I once considered absolute. She lowered her voice further. The coalition needs stability, but perhaps fear is not the only path to it. Eli glanced at the guards, then back to her. What would you do differently, if given the chance? A theoretical question, of course, she said with the barest hint of a smile. But theoretically, I would consider your targeted approach. Address grievances while maintaining strength. Build loyalty through benefit, not merely compliance through fear. That would be revolutionary. Indeed. And likely to face significant resistance from those who profit from the current system. She studied him intently. Tell me honestly, Captain Reed, in your assessment, is it possible? Can an empire built on fear transform without collapsing? Entirely, Eli considered carefully. History suggests such transitions are difficult but possible. The key is maintaining enough stability through the transition period, while implementing reforms gradually. Assuming one had the opportunity to implement anything at all, Vex added dryly. A commotion outside interrupted their conversation. Shouts echoed down the corridor, followed by the distinctive sound of weapon fire. The energy barrier flickered and died. A guard appeared, not one of their usual jailers, but wearing the insignia of Vex's personal guard. Empress, he said urgently. We've secured this section temporarily. We must move quickly. Vex rose smoothly. Situation report. Admiral Krell remained loyal. He's gathered forces questioning Councillor Traz's authority. Your human crew has been instrumental. They provided distraction in the engineering section. That allowed us to disable security protocols. My crew? Eli asked in surprise. They earned respect among Coalition technical staff, the guard explained, leading them down a service corridor. When they claimed human technology could improve our systems, security was relaxed. They exploited this to help loyalist forces. Vex gave Eli a significant look. It seems humanity's approach to building alliances works after all. They hurried, through maintenance passages, avoiding main corridors where fighting continued. Eventually, they reached a secure communications center where Admiral Krell was coordinating operations. Empress, Krell acknowledged with obvious relief. The palace remains contested, but we hold key systems. 3 fleet commanders have declared for you, 2 for Traz. Others await the outcome before committing. And the rebellious systems. Vex asked, growing in number. Traz's brutal response united populations against coalition authority. Vex processed this information rapidly. Open a multi-system broadcast channel. I will address all coalition worlds simultaneously. Your Eminence, Krell objected. Security protocols are less important than preventing civil war, she interrupted. Now, as technicians prepared the broadcast, Vex turned to Eli. Your counsel, Captain. You have studied human leadership in crisis. Eli considered carefully. Be strong, but not cruel. acknowledge legitimate concerns, offer a clear path forward. That benefits both the central authority and those who feel marginalized, and those who betrayed me. Justice without vengeance demonstrates true strength, Vex nodded slowly. A delicate balance. The broadcast system chimed readiness. Vex straightened, composing herself with imperial dignity despite her disheveled appearance. When the signal activated, her image would be projected across 12 systems and 83 worlds. Transmitting in 3, 2, 1, the technician announced. Vex gazed directly into the lens. Citizens of the Coalition, this is Empress Vex. Reports of my removal from power are false. I address you now during an attempted coup led by Councillor Traz, who seeks to undermine the stability we have built together. She paused, then did something unprecedented. The Coalition faces legitimate challenges. Systems in the Outer Rim have expressed grievances that merit attention. For too long, my response to dissent has been force alone. Today marks a new approach. Eli watched, amazed at her tactical pivot. Effective immediately, I am implementing reforms. Systems that remain loyal will receive increased autonomy over internal affairs. Resource quotas will be adjusted to allow greater local retention. Coalition military presence will be reduced in stable regions. She leaned forward slightly. However, make no mistake, those who choose violence will meet strength. Councillor Traz and his conspirators will face justice. The Coalition will endure, evolving to serve all citizens better. Her silver eyes seemed to pierce through the camera. We have ruled through fear. Now we will lead through strength tempered with wisdom. The choice before each world is clear. Prosperity through cooperation or isolation through resistance. The transmission ended. For a moment, silence filled the command center. A significant departure from established protocol, Admiral Krell observed neutrally. Yes, Vex replied. Now we discover if Captain Reed's human wisdom translates to galactic politics, or if we have just accelerated our downfall. 6 months later, Eli stood at a viewport in the palace's eastern wing, watching vessels depart for the day's trading rotations. The Coalition capital planet glittered with activity, its orbital platforms busier than ever despite, or perhaps because of, the significant changes implemented across the systems. Admiring the view, Captain? A familiar voice asked. Eli turned to see Empress Vex approaching, flanked by her usual guards, but with a notably smaller entourage than before. Her attire had evolved over the months, still regal but less militaristic, with elements incorporated from various Coalition species. It's impressive, Eli acknowledged. Trade volume up 20% since the reforms, according to yesterday's reports. 23%, she corrected with the hint of a smile. The Outer Rim systems are proving surprisingly productive when not crushed under excessive quotas. They walked together along the corridor, a scene that no longer drew shocked stares from palace staff. The diplomatic shuttle is prepared for your departure, Vex said. Earth's coordinates have been programmed as requested. Eli nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. My crew is ready. We've been away from home much longer than planned. Your people will be surprised by what returns to them, Vex observed. Not just their missing exploration vessel, but the promise of diplomatic relations with the Coalition. They'll be more surprised by the Coalition itself, Eli replied. The changes you've implemented in 6 months would take years or decades in human governance systems. Advantages of autocracy, Vex said dryly. Some efficiencies remain. They reached the ceremonial hall where the final treaty would be signed. Representatives from all 12 systems waited inside, no longer cowering in fear, but standing with newfound dignity. The failed coup had created an unexpected opportunity. With many hardline officials removed, younger, more adaptable leaders had risen to prominence. Before entering, Vex paused. Walk with me a moment longer, Captain. They moved to a private alcove, guards maintaining discreet distance. You understand that what you witnessed today is merely the beginning, Vex said quietly. Many in the Coalition still believe strength comes only through dominance. The reforms remain fragile. All important changes are fragile at first, Eli replied, but they grow stronger through success. Perhaps. She studied him with those silver eyes that had once held only cold calculation, but now contained something more complex. When you return to Earth as the Coalition's ambassador, you will carry great responsibility. Your planet will want technology, protection, knowledge. Some may counsel aggression, seeing the Coalition as vulnerable during transition. Eli smiled. You've studied human history well enough now to know that's possible, but you've also seen enough to know it's not inevitable. Indeed, Vex hesitated, then continued, I have never thanked you properly. For saving my life during the assassination attempt, yes, but more importantly for showing an alternative path. The human concept of mercy was foreign to me. Now I understand its power. Not weakness, but strength, Eli said. Precisely, she gestured toward the ceremonial hall. The treaty awaits. Let us make history, Coalition and human, together. The massive doors swung open. As they entered side by side, Eli reflected on the improbable journey. One small human ship, lost, at the edge of unknown space, had changed the course of an empire. Not through superior technology or military might, but through something uniquely human, the stubborn belief that compassion could overcome fear. Inside, Admiral Krell stepped forward. Representatives are assembled, Empress. Vex nodded and moved toward the central platform where the treaty lay. As tradition dictated, she would speak the ancient words that had formalized coalition agreements for centuries, but today she had added new phrases, composed with Eli's assistance, that emphasized mutual benefit rather than submission. As the ceremony began, Eli caught sight of his crew members, now serving as Earth's first diplomatic delegation. Dr. Lin gave him a subtle nod of approval. They had survived against impossible odds, and in doing so, perhaps saved millions of lives. Across multiple worlds, the Empress's voice rang out clear and strong through the hall. Today marks not an ending, but a transformation. The Coalition endures not because we are feared, but because we are valued. Eli listened as she continued, hearing echoes of conversations they had shared during long nights discussing governance, history, and the delicate balance between strength and compassion. The words she spoke now would be transmitted across all 83 worlds, setting a new foundation for generations to come. When the treaty was signed, representatives from each system approached not with the trembling deference of the past, but with measured respect. The atmosphere held something new, not the tense silence of terror, but the productive quiet of purpose. Later, as Eli prepared to board the diplomatic vessel that would carry him home, Empress Vex made a final appearance at the launching bay. Captain Reed, she said formally for the benefit of those watching, the Coalition entrusts you with our interests among humanity. May your journey be swift. Then, more quietly, as they exchanged the ceremonial farewell gesture, she added, Thank you for showing me that an empire need not choose between strength and mercy. The greatest power comes from wielding both. Eli boarded the ship that would begin Earth's connection to a much wider galactic community. As the vessel lifted off, he watched the Imperial Palace recede, a structure once synonymous with fear, now slowly becoming a symbol of something else. Not perfect, not fully transformed, but changing. One small human ship had been captured at the edge of Coalition space, and because of it, an Empress who had ruled with fear alone had discovered what mercy felt like. Not weak, but powerful in ways she had never imagined. As stars streaked past the viewport and his crew prepared for the journey home, Eli knew humanity's real contribution to the galaxy was just beginning. Not conquest, not domination, but something far more revolutionary. The radical idea that compassion could build what fear never could. An empire that might actually last.